The biggest problem is most people are trying to fix a behavior in them without actually understanding where it's coming from. And the thing is that you can't outwork a pattern that you can't see in yourself. And so, I mean, like a lot of us end up blaming willpower or discipline, or just say, it's just because I'm not good enough to be able to get over this thing, or this is just how I am, or, whatever it is. And the thing is like, those are all the wrong target of what you're trying to figure out. And you stop blaming all these outside factors and you start to be able to look inward. And once you can look inward and understand those in yourself, then you can view other people and see them that way. It's like, once you understand what somebody's looking for, what they're going after, because at the end of the day, people in almost any interaction, they want to heal a degree of their inner child, or they want to feel like their inner child again. If it was a great childhood, they probably want to feel like it again. If it was not very good, they want to heal something in there, and they want to go against that early feeling that they had of insignificance, of frustration, of not being heard, of being bossed around or being driven by incorrect things. And it's honestly like, probably the most freeing thing you can do is once you understand that in yourself and you can view that in other people, you start to view people a lot better, because you start to see that, that person is doing that because they had this go on in their childhood, or maybe, right? You're not going to know everything. You're not going to know everything everybody's going through, but being able to view them and say, okay, I understand why they're doing that, and they're just trying to get a point of reassurance for me from this, because they didn't get that growing up. And it's quite crazy to see how many things you get that you hold on to from childhood that you don't even know exist. And those are things that actually end up running your life, and people actually go their whole entire life without ever understanding any of this, that you're really driven by early on childhood desires and frustrations of things, and it turns into an issue for people, because at some point those holes are not fillable if you don't know the hole you're trying to fill. And that's like the whole entire reason I wanted to make this video at all, is to be able to explain these things and help you understand those things, because people have all these different desires that they can't even fill because they don't even know they exist. And so for me, once I looked inward and I figured out, like, in middle school and in early high school, I felt a certain way, and different social aspects made me feel a certain way, and I felt, not very well listened to and stuff like that. And now I see that come out, where I always want to get a word in, and I always want to make sure that people are listening to me. And the number one way that I feel respected is when people let me speak and let me talk and all those things. And it's like, you don't have to do that to feel respected. You don't have to, make everyone listen to what you have to say to feel respected. But it comes from a point of not wanting to feel the way you felt before, where people weren't listening to you, they weren't saving a spot for you, they weren't whatever. And these fears and these objectives come up when the most in relationships, and because it's the most vulnerable time that we have to be able to have somebody that can kind of heal these things for us. And so in a lot of cases, we see things that would hurt us in a relationship that wouldn't hurt us in a regular setting, because this is the kind of spot that we want to be the most vulnerable, and we want somebody to be able to heal us the most. And when we are not getting that from somebody, we end up pushing away. And the thing is these are not all good desires. Sometimes these are desires that you just have to face and see, wow, that was just how it was as a kid. Not everyone's trying to do this to me anymore. It's not how it is. You're not insignificant. People do want to listen to you. People do care about you. They do care about your opinion. All these different things that we see that came up when we're a kid is like, we don't have to pull for safety all the time. We don't have to do these things. We don't have to have a frame dynamic over people all the time and control the frame over absolutely everybody, because we want to feel safe. Because when we control the frame over somebody, which is the social dynamic, is they're looking up to you, so to speak, for sake of a viewpoint of what that means. And a lot of people will do this very often, and you'll see this in high-performing men, is they'll try to control the frame of everything, because if they don't, then now they have to be vulnerable. And not being in control of the frame and not being in the higher ground in a social setting does not stop you from having a good social interaction. It does not mean that you're unsafe, but if that's what you learned in childhood, that you had to control the frame and you had to control the scenario, then that's what you're going to go to all the time. And the people that don't allow you to do that, those are going to be people that you're going to try to push away. And that's probably the worst thing that we do, is we see things that are false inputs from people that they're not actually trying to do these things to us, but we have this viewpoint that we're viewing the world from, and so now we're going to take what they're doing and try to put them in a box of, is it safe or is it unsafe? In a lot of cases, we'll see stuff that feels safe that's not. In a lot of cases, even more often, we'll see stuff that feels unsafe but is safe, and it's just our brain trying to put it into a category to protect us. It's not necessarily our brain's fault, but it's our job to understand the brain and understand how it's working and what it's doing to us and how it's changing our behaviors. One of the craziest things that really unlocked my brain for me was understanding how many of these desires actually controlled so many of my decisions going throughout my career in jumping from different jobs, or jumping from business to business, or from sales position to sales position, or when I was playing sports or whatever it is, how many of these show up real time and really change our decision making, and then use our brain to rationalize these decisions when realistically we're making these decisions out of a point of fear and trying to run away from something. And it uses our brain to make this a rational feeling decision, so we actually go through with it. Because the amygdala is very smart. You know, our primal brain is undeniably smart. It's really fucking dumb in reality, but it's actually really smart in the sense that it actually will like deploy us and deploy our intelligence to help us rationalize a decision that it wants us to make, and then puts us in the position of putting that desire into effect and putting that action into effect to make us do what it really wants. And it doesn't mean it's the correct decision. It just means that we're making a decision that takes us away from a point of fear, or pulls us away from a potential thing that it sees as dangerous that is not really dangerous, but it might even just see it as dangerous because it's unknown. It hasn't experienced that thing before. And so it's honestly almost scary to understand that, because you see how many things you've done now, and you see it happen in real time, where you'll try to rationalize a decision to make, and then once you understand, oh, this is just because I want to avoid X, it's like, holy crap, this completely changes everything, because I had all these 10 pieces of evidence as to why I should do it, when in reality those are just crap rationalizations that your brain uses for your amygdala or your amygdala uses in your brain to make you do the action that it wants you to do, which is all just crap. And it's really terrifying if you don't understand this, and that's the number one reason I made this video, is because I want you to have the same like relief point that I had, being able to make decisions and stop yourself in mid-rationalization and say, this is my amygdala, this is my resistance, my lizard brain that's trying to stop me from doing this thing because of this. It's not actually a bad decision, it's just trying to run away from this thing that it doesn't like. Whatever it is. And a lot of those fears come from childhood, or come from whatever, or you're scared of a failure, or you're scared of an embarrassment, or looking a certain way that you looked that way when you were a kid in a certain aspect, and your brain now sees this moment as being very similar or potentially similar to that thing, and then now it wants to make you rationalize these decisions for you to run away from that thing, when in reality the thing that you're going towards is not actually dangerous or bad, and it's really not going to give you any of those things. And your primal brain doesn't understand that, because it makes most of its understandings of the world and its bearings of the world by the time you turn 12. And it makes almost all of them, almost 100%, if not 100% of them, by the time you're 18. And you can't reverse any of those until you understand them fully, like we're talking about in this video, to be able to reverse them, and or at least see them and understand why we're doing certain things, or why certain decisions make sense to us. And it really allows us to then take action out of these things. And so the point is, and the actionable thing is when you have a decision come up and you're trying to rationalize why you should do it, you have to think, why are these rationalizations in place? And why is my brain telling me to do these things? And then when you have a decision that you're trying to avoid, a thing you're trying to go away from, especially when it's something that you desire, that you want, and there's all these doubts that come into place, all these rationalizations that we actually use to stop us from doing that thing to push us towards our goals, like start that new business, go into that new job, break up with that person and be with a different kind of person, or go after this person and stay with this person, whatever it is. They're all fears that drive us to make these rationalizations to have those things happen. And you see it all the time. I mean, you see people try to, go into a new job, and the thing is the rationalizations make total sense. They want to leave their job and go into a new business, and then all these rationalizations come in. It's like, well, I am making good money and the market's tough, and it's going to be hard for me to get a job somewhere else, and it's tough to make money here. And then the problem is, when the market's good, you're going to then say, oh, well, the market's good, pay is up, my salary's up, everything's good, I'm gonna take advantage of this time. And so there's always a point where your brain's gonna be able to rationalize a decision that you don't want to make, or that you do want to make, that draws you away from a potential fear. A lot of those come from embarrassment, or being in a social setting and you think people think that you're stupid for doing that. And it makes total sense primarily. We used to be dead if we were a social outcast. And so there's so many decisions that we make that push us that way, and understanding why is the most important thing. So if you can take anything from this video, it's this. The more that you can dig deep and figure out why you're pushing yourself in a certain direction and what probably drove you to have the fear of running away from the thing that you're running away from, that will free you from almost every single point of mental frustration and stress and turmoil that you're going through, because now you can understand the lens that your brain is actually viewing the world from. Not the way that you are viewing the world from, but the way that your brain is viewing the world from, which is much more important, because you can view the world very positively, but if your brain, your primal brain doesn't, then you're never going to get to a point in your life and where you want to go, because that negative primal brain is always going to have control of what you're thinking and what you're doing, and will always end up trumping the things that the rationalizations that make sense in order for you to go do a good thing, and it's going to trump those with worse rationalizations, which will stop you from getting the dreams that you want, getting into the position you want, getting into the abundance you want, whatever it may be. And that's like probably the scariest thing in the world. So I mean, the number one thing, like I said, the number one thing is always try to observe the rationalizations your brain is giving you and really look at the decisions you're doing, because those rationalizations, those like almost gut rationalizations, are coming from a point of bias. They're not coming from a point of even thinking. And so what I do is, if I'm trying to make a decision, I will actually do just a classic pro-con list, and then after I write the pro-con list, I will look at, why is this actually a pro? And what could I be avoiding by making this a pro? And same with the cons. What could I avoid? What am I avoiding by making this a con on my list? And what am I going towards by making this a con on my list? And once you can see that, you can really dig into what your true desires are. And then you can actually use those in your favor to make your brain view the things you really want in life to be the fulfillment of those problems that it wants to solve, rather than things that are pushing you towards the problem that makes you experience the problem more often. So if you want more help with this, follow this channel. Follow me on Instagram at @TheCameronJohn. And if you want to work with me directly, there's links all over the place. God bless. I love you. Your brain's a muscle. Train it every day.